Um, I'm Stephen Jaffe. I'm the president of Democrats of the Desert. This is our regular April member meeting of our club. The format we have been usually following is I usually say a few words about what's going on. I then give the floor to our regional director, Ellie, who is smarter and knows more than I do about most of these things. And she will bring us up to date on whatever needs to be said in terms of what's going on in the region and the area. And then I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed speaker, Judge Bert Strunsky, who is running for district attorney. So I just want to make a few comments. We're in strange times. The strange times we are continuing just when all of the mask mandates appeared to be coming off. I listened to the news last night and there have been surges in COVID, particularly in the UK, which apparently is a predictor of what happens in the US. So I think if you're going to make errors of judgment on the COVID issue and how cautious to be, make your errors on the side of caution and wear masks in large gatherings and in closed spaces rather than not. The other comment I want to make really is a question to everybody. The situation in the Ukraine is horrible. It's really beyond description. I was only alive for the last few months of World War II, but seems like it's part of me. My dad was a big part of it. And the only thing that I could compare it to what's going on in the Ukraine is photos and movies that I saw from World War II. And the Democratic Party and our president and administration have surely stepped up and I think done whatever they can, or at least as much as they think they can, to assist the Ukrainians without risking getting into a one-on-one with Russia. And I'm sure that's the subject of a big discussion about how far the administration should go. But the question I have is, there is a faction, and it's a pretty far left progressive faction of the Democratic Party, who are writing and speaking as though they are allies of Putin. They don't believe, they keep saying that the US has financed Nazis in the Ukraine. And it is completely inexplicable to me where this, I don't know how big this faction is, but these are people that I've known for some years. I don't understand it. And if anybody wants to contact me and somehow explain to me how part of our party or people who identify as Democrats are taking this very strange stance, I'd really like to hear it. I think it's the subject of some discussion. So with that, I just want to stress how important all these elections are. One of our speakers here today is in one of the most important elections because it is a county-wide election. There are very few Riverside County-wide elections, and the district attorney is probably the most important person in reining in abuses and excesses of power by the sheriff, who is another county-wide elected official. So we can talk about that when I introduce Judge Strunsky. Now I want to defer to Ellie to bring us up to date on the state and regional issues that she's been working on. So I give the floor to Ellie.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everybody. And a couple of things are going on. Number one, pardon me, I just signed up. I'll be going in July to the executive board meeting in Los Angeles. It's going to be, as of now, it's going to be live in Los Angeles in July. So I will be going to the executive board meeting there. At the as you probably know, on the 9th of May, the ballots will begin to drop. You can expect yours probably that first week. If you have any questions or any problems, give the Democratic headquarters of the Desert a call, and we'll be able to track it for you and find out what's going on. May 23rd is the last day to register to vote for this election. And so I will tell you that I'm very excited and pleased to tell you that we've got a young group of people that are going to do voter registration at Walmart, who in Palm Springs, who I met with the other day, and I cannot tell you how encouraging and how welcoming Walmart is to have us do some voter registration there. It's going to take place, the first one will take place on Friday, April 29th, and then they'll be there for about 3 Saturdays right up to the 23rd. So you're going to see voter registration, believe it or not, at Walmart. So we're happy campers about that. At Democratic headquarters, we now have additional, this is our 3rd batch of Ukraine supportive buttons. We've got the flags, we've got those now back in the headquarters. We also have bumper stickers for Will Rollins. We have, I need some more from Bert Strunsky. They have been going out the door, so I'm sure we'll be getting some from him as well. And we have flyers at the Democratic headquarters if people would like to make a donation to help the efforts in Ukraine. We have different groups that you can donate to that have been vetted and they are clear. As far as the party is concerned, again, we are getting prepped up and ready to go for the July Board of Directors meeting. And so if anyone has anything they want to talk about with regard to having a resolution introduced at that convention, please, they have to be submitted to me no later than June 9th, and actually earlier than that, because they have to go up to the California Democratic Party in order to take a look at it. So if you're interested in doing anything of that nature, please get in contact with me. I'll put my information up on the chat. And that's pretty much it. We've got a lot going on, and it's all the news so far.
Ellie, I know that there is an event coming up next month, and the reason I know it because it's scheduled on my birthday. But you want to talk about the May 21st? There's a party in the park.
Yeah, there's going to be you're referring to the Riverside County Democratic Party rally that's going to take place in May in Banning Beaumont. There's a great club or park up there that's we've had events there over the years. This will be the first big one that will be live in person kind of thing. They are going to have different speakers. I know that Burke has already confirmed he's going to be one of the speakers. They're asking Mark Takano, they're asking Raul Ruiz, they're asking Will, of course. A number of people are going to be there, and it's going to be a rally. It's a good old-fashioned rally that's going to be taking place. They are asking for a donation. I believe it's $75. That includes lunch. But again, this is money that's going to go to the Riverside County Democratic Party, and it will enable them to do what has to be done to get the vote out, which is the most important thing that we can be doing as Democrats. So it's all going to be fun. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. I see a question regarding Dianne Feinstein. I'm not privy to what's going on. My understanding is that she's fine. I will tell you that I watched the hearings for Supreme Court Justice Jackson, and I found her to be fully cognizant of what was going on. I found her questions to be very good. I want to remind everyone of something. She's got another 1.5 years, 2 years on her term. If she were to resign today, that means that the governor of California, who I have tremendous admiration for, that he would have been handpicking 2 senators to represent this state. That can end up being very problematic for a state that's 40 million people. So my feeling personally is that let's just see what happens. She has staff around her that helps her out when she needs it. She's 89 years old. And again, I find it interesting to note that they're only talking about Dianne Feinstein's age, but nobody seems to talk about any of the Republican men and their ages or their cognitive abilities. We could start with the former guy that was in the White House. But anyway, my understanding is that she's doing very well. And, she has just lost her husband of over 40 years. Maybe what we have to do is just step back a little bit and just hope for the best. How's that?
Thank
That's
you,
all I have
Elaine.
to say on her. Any other questions? Let me know. I'm going to put my phone number up and the headquarters number up. And I thank you, Stephen, for the time to say a few words.
Oh, as always, Ellie, you're always welcome, and we always need your information. I just want to make one more point I forgot to add, then I'll introduce Judge Strumsky. I've gotten a number of requests asking me, why don't we resume in-person meetings? And we're going to take that up in an e-board meeting, hopefully next week. I'm going to schedule it almost right away. It's not an easy call to make because of a number of factors. One, because of COVID, it's a roller coaster. Secondly, because some of the really good speakers that we've been able to get over the past year would not have been able to come had it been in person. And it affects the speakers. The idea of a hybrid and both streamed and in person sounds good, but practically presents some problems, because if 4 or 5 people were to show up in person and the rest Zoom or vice versa, it really skews how things would be run. So I'm not ignoring the requests. We are going to discuss it, and I'll report to the members as soon as there's any decisions to be made about
Very
that.
quickly, Stephen, just piggybacking what you're saying. We've had Coachella here for the last 2 weeks. And unfortunately, the numbers as of today have gone up in our area. So I think this is, again, I agree with you. We'd all like to have live meetings. But again, there's something like 600 new cases that have been reported in the last couple of days in Riverside County. It's a little scary process.
It's not an easy call. I mean, I see the pros and cons of both sides of the issue. I'm just going to have the discussion with the e-board and see if we can come to a conclusion about that. All right. Let's move on to the fun part. As I touched on a few minutes ago, there are very few more important elections in our county than the county-wide elections. The sheriff, the district attorney, even the supervisors are not county-wide, they are district. And in light of the controversy surrounding our sheriff and his politics and his, I guess I'd call it, philosophy of law enforcement, there are very few countervailing powers which can try to rein in that kind of behavior and conduct. The strongest person legally to do that are the supervisors and the district attorney. Our speaker today is, I think I can safely say, the leading candidate, a Democratic candidate for district attorney, Judge Bert Strumsky. He's got incredible credentials. He's a person from what I have seen in my conversations, of empathy and intelligence and a lot of experience. So I'm very pleased to be able to introduce Judge Strumsky to our membership and talk about whatever he wants to talk about. But I hope he touches on the sheriff issue, which I think we're all concerned about as well. So, Judge, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, everyone, for hearing me out. I know I've talked to many of you before, so I don't want to do the traditional campaign spiel. I really like to answer any questions, things that are important to you. I'll obviously address the issue with the sheriff and how the district attorney's and sheriff's role interact. And I'd like to talk to you specifically about the article that came out today regarding the sheriff, as well as the district attorney's involvement with this Our Watch group in Marietta, and why it is so concerning that our 2 chief law enforcement officers of the county are so interested in pandering to a group which espouses, by anybody's estimate, what is really hate specifically directed at our LGBTQ community. And this isn't something that is not known. It's something that you can find through YouTube, where there are specific comments made by the head of this group, Tim Thompson, specifically against the LGBTQ community, as well as many other causes that the Democrats have endorsed. And it's deeply concerning to me, and I think everyone, that it's not widely known that both our sheriff and district attorney are literally headlining events for this group 3 or 4 times each in the last year. The latest of which you'll see in the article posted in the chat involves the sheriff hosting a fundraiser for extreme right school board candidates that if you just look at some of the philosophies, it's deeply concerning and antithetical to what Democrats certainly stand for. Frankly, I think what Americans should stand for. But I'll just tell you a little bit. Again, I'm Burke Strunsky. I'm currently a Superior Court judge. Been a judge. I was elected 6 years ago. Been a judge for 5 years now. I was elected countywide, same demographic that I'm running for DA now. So I've been in the race about 2.5 months now. I'll just list some of my endorsements. I'm really, really proud to have Congressman Mark Takano, Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara, the Lieutenant Governor, Ms. Kounalakis, Joy Silver, Assembly Member Cervantes and Medina, Mayor Tim Sheridan, Mayor Lisa Middleton, banning Mayor Pro Tem Colleen Wallace, former Palm Springs Mayors Jeff Kors and Christy Holstedge, IE United, the IE Labor Council, Stonewall Democrats of the Desert, Courage California, which we got just last week, Democratic Women of the Desert, of course, thanks to you all, Democrats of the Desert, Planned Parenthood, as well as a litany of other leaders here in Riverside County. I'm really still working on some of the Democrats, especially my representative, including Assemblyman Garcia, Congressman Ruiz, and Supervisor Perez. I've been unable to get a meeting with them and get their endorsements, but I'm working on it. So as I said, I'm a judge now, was a prosecutor for 15 years, and I've really had a front row seat to tremendous injustice and ineffectiveness. Crime is way up. The budget is up 52%. And we really just need a change. And I'm someone throughout my 2 decades of doing this, I've always prioritized public safety, but I also understood that the scales of justice balance only when we treat every criminal case with compassion, clear-eyed realism, fairness, and respect for the human dignity of each victim and each defendant. And that's been my philosophy for 2 decades now. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about where we are generally in the country, and more specifically the state with criminal justice reform. We were on a really positive track in reducing mass incarceration, focus on mental health and drug treatment as good alternatives, good public safety alternatives to jail and prison. And recently, because of a confluence of factors, including what the DA in Los Angeles and the DA in San Francisco have done, and I want to talk more specifically about what I think they've done right and what I think they've done wrong, and the rise in crime. And it's those factors coming together that has, there's a very significant backlash, even within the Democratic Party, to anything that's considered a criminal justice reform or progressive prosecutorial reform. And I think we really need to push back against that. And show why some of the things that were done in LA and done in San Francisco were good, but the way it was implemented was problematic, which is the result of this, and not throw away these good ideas, these good ideologies, and say just because they were done a certain way in these places, we can do it better here, we can do it smarter here, and we can do it more humane here, and we can really create a system that makes us proud and protects our families. So, and that's been the motto of my campaign. Despite that, my opponent, Mike Hestrin, has made it a deliberate effort to link me with George Soros. And say that I'm the George Soros funded candidate. And in fact, there's an article that's probably going to be published next week in the Desert Sun about this, so it's timely. And to the point where I actually sent him a cease and desist letter, because I've said, you know, if you're going to say this as an officer of the court, as a member of the bar, you might want to have some evidence and be able to point to a donor that actually has given me money that is George Soros oriented. But what it's being used for by regressive right-wing prosecutors is this kind of pejorative trope to say that this is somebody who doesn't care about public safety. This is somebody that wants to let everybody out of jail and nobody gets punished, and we're all going to end up in this very left-wing, crazy criminal justice system. And it's really something that I think it's important to factually push back against, because one, I haven't received any money from George Soros or anybody connected to George Soros, as far as I know. But that is something that the other side will say, because it plays very well and makes people very scared. And we all know that fear is the number one motivating factor to bring people to the polls. And so he's effectively using that, and I'm pushing back against it. But I think it's important. It's interesting that the media seems to be focused on that and writing an article on that, and which something that doesn't exist, which is any connection I have to George Soros. But they're not interested in the fact that both our sheriff and our district attorney are publicly, actively, and consistently pandering to this really, really extremist organization. And why it's so important is the district attorney and the sheriff are the people that are going to initiate prosecutions of hate crime. And the fact that they have no problem associating with groups which actively call people of the transgender community mentally ill or possessed by demons. And the two of them are pandering to these groups. And then we expect them to hold the line when it comes to the increasing violent crime against our trans community and our LGBTQ community in general. So this is not something that should be thrown as unimportant. This is not a one-off. They have consistently, you can look it up on YouTube, gone 3 or 4 times and been the headline speaker for this Our Watch and Tim Thompson's Murrieta Church. And now I like the idea that you reach out to everyone, but I don't see him reaching out to our community groups and groups in marginalized communities that are actually dramatically affected by criminal justice policy. Rather, he's reaching out and over representing these groups that are extreme and don't stand for the values that I think our party and in fact our country stands for. And one of the things about this being a countywide election that I need to remind people is how big our county is. If on a population scale, if we were a state, just Riverside County was a state, we're bigger. We would be bigger than 15 states in this country. We'd be the 36th largest state in this country if we were just a state, just us, Riverside County, as far as population. And I think that's stunning to see how many people are going to be affected by this election for district attorney. When you have Mike Hestrin, who is an extremist, regressive prosecutor who pursues the death penalty more than any prosecutor in the country, who has made it so 2.5 times the amount of children are incarcerated than the statewide average, who prosecutes children as adults over 2.5 times as often as the statewide average, and doesn't have a comprehensive juvenile diversion program, who makes it so we have more people in state prison than any other county in the state other than LA, which is 4 times our size, who pushes back against the good and productive public safety use of drug courts and mental health courts, who is pushes back on using diversion for low-level misdemeanors, who has created this bottleneck of cases within our criminal justice system, where we have 1,900 cases set for trial in 12 criminal courtrooms. So, and who takes more money from police unions, going back to the law enforcement and connection with the sheriff, than any other elected prosecutor in the country, yet he has mandated criminal oversight over law enforcement misconduct. So this is a quite stunning and stark conflict of interest that's being allowed to happen. And we already have the Attorney General stepping in to prosecute a case that Mr. Hestron has refused to prosecute. And the community doesn't trust law enforcement right now. We know that on a very broad level, and they're never going to trust law enforcement unless they know that the district attorney, who is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and the civilian oversight of the police departments will hold police officers accountable for proven misconduct. And so until that happens, we're not going to have the community's trust. And that's a public safety issue. If the community doesn't trust law enforcement, they don't come to testify, they don't report crimes, they don't do what we need them to do to make us all safer. And so this has a very dramatic public safety impact. And Mr. Hestron's answer to it is it's not a problem. I can take more money, I can be fair. And he really just doesn't understand that this inherent conflict of interest is unacceptable. It's contrary to good public safety practices, and it's unethical. I mean, it really is unethical to take that much money from the same group that you have mandated oversight of. So I've been talking for a while. I'm happy to take any specific questions. I know there's some things that have been coming in the chat. I could look at those. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to share for some.
I have two comments and a question, and then I'll throw it open to anybody else with a question. First, the other comment I want to make is anytime you hear an attempt by somebody on the far right to tie anyone or anything to George Soros, that is very often code for a pretty transparent anti-Semitic slur. That's been the history over the last 4 or 5 years. So I just, you need to understand that when somebody says you're funded by George Soros, it's, at least in my opinion, a thinly veiled racial slur or religious slur. The other thing is a happier announcement, which I saved for when Judge finished speaking. On May 14th, a couple weeks from now, Democrats of the Desert is holding an event for Judge Strumsky from 4 to 6 p.m. It's going to be at what used to be the Westfield Mall. I don't know what they're calling it now. Palm Desert Mall. Yes, it's at the right in the front, the pizza place, Stuffed Pizza, on the patio there. We're doing it there for a number of reasons. One, it's centrally located. 2, it's easy to find. Everybody knows where it is. And 3, there's lots and lots of parking. So if everybody in this meeting or anyone else is certainly invited, it's May 14th, 4 to 6 at Stuffed Pizza. So we're happy to do that for our speaker. So my question is, you mentioned that the sheriff's budget has kind of exploded and increased by, I think you said around 50%. What is that being used for? Is this the militarization of law enforcement, or do you know what that's being used for?
So yeah, the 52% was asked to the district attorney's budget, and as we know from recent articles, the district attorney.
Well, same question regarding the district attorney.
Okay, great. So yes, the district attorney's budget has gone, just since Mike Hestron was elected, from 104 million to 161 million. So it's increased by 53%, just in the time he's been elected. And a couple things I'd like to address. One is one that you just mentioned, Stephen, which is the use of or the obtaining of these military type weapons and vehicles. I can't think of a reason, frankly, that the district attorney would need armored vehicles and high-powered military type weapons. Maybe there's a reason. I want to keep open a little bit of, a little bit of discretion for the district attorney to say that there are times we need these. I haven't heard an answer from him when this came up. Maybe they do some dignitary protection or something that requires these. So I don't want to say we absolutely don't need these. But I'm frankly can't possibly see a reason that makes sense to me with what I know now why we need those military type weapons and vehicles. I don't know when they were purchased, and I don't know how it plays into the budget. They could have been purchased a while ago, but certainly I can guarantee that we're not going to be purchasing more of these if I am elected, unless there's some duty a district attorney has that none of us are aware of. And I worked in that office for a decade, so I can tell you I'm not aware of any reason why you need these weapons. One of the things I mentioned was the pursuit of the death penalty. So every case that Mr. Hestron decides to pursue the death penalty on, and again, he does that more than any other elected prosecutor in the country. There's one year where he sent more people to death row in the state of Texas total. So it gives you some perspective on how kind of out of sync we are. But that costs $1 million more to prosecute a case just at the trial level as a death penalty case than it would cost if we just went with life without the possibility of parole. $1 million on each of those. And just think what that could buy. That could buy more victim services. That money could be spent on mental health and drug treatment courts that we desperately need. Definitely need to scale up the mental health services that are available, because if we want to send more people to mental health court, we need to scale up the services, which is complex and hard right now. And we could spend the money on actually these prosecutions that are known to make us safe. What we know about the money being spent in the DA's office, despite the fact that the budget has gone up 53%, the Judicial Council, which keeps all of the statistics, has told us that he's taking less cases to trial, he's filing less cases, and he's dispoing, in other words, resolving less cases, despite this huge budget increase. So bottom line is he's doing less with more, and that's concerning.
All right, Ellie, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I have, and it's good to see you again, sir. First, you're a force, and it's great news. I have two very quick questions, if I may. The first question is that there was a case a few years back, a group of children were found, I believe in Marietta. I could be wrong on the location, but they were known as the Turpin children, and they were horribly, horribly abused. The parents were sent to prison. The DHS was supposed to watch, these kids were supposed to be protected, and the DA, Hestron, said, yes, everything was fine and wonderful and the children were all safe. Turns out they weren't. Turns out that they were being further abused where they were placed. And I'm wondering if you will continue to pursue, because Hestron has dropped the ball again regarding this case. And I'm hoping that you're going to not ignore it and sweep it away and say, no, we're going to find out what happened here with DHS and what happened with these children.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. First of all, I spent many of the years in the DA's office prosecuting crimes against children, so this is near and dear to my heart. So it was actually something that I revealed about the DA's office, because I knew it, and I knew Mr. Hestron was not being honest. When he went on national TV and said the district attorney's office doesn't have the resources to have given these children what they needed to survive. And that was false. I mean, there really is no way around it to say that was a lie. And here's why it was a lie. When you watch that 48 Hours episode, you saw literally his victim advocate, the head of his victim advocate division. So this is the person that's head of all of the victim services in his entire office, holding one of these, these lottery type blown up checks, giving $210,000 and change to the district attorney's victim services department from the Corona Chamber of Commerce for purposes of these Turpin kids. So the investigation that's going on that the Board of Supervisors initiated is separate from that. To be clear, that's dealing with the money that was put in the conservatorship by other people and other fundraisers. But the district attorney's office works in parallel with a nonprofit that is literally housed within the district attorney's office and is staffed by many of the same people who are employed by Hestron, was given $210,000 to be used for these children. And it sat there. And there was something like, I don't know, $1,500 or something that was spent during the entire time these Turpin kids are being subject to homelessness, exposed to other crimes. Some of them became victims of charged crimes of abuse and violence. And when Hestron was on TV, in one of the most disingenuous things I've ever seen a politician do, pointed the fingers at others, blaming them for the systems being failing, when he had in the nonprofit, which is part of the DA's office, and he'll tell you it's not. It's the same people. If you ask somebody in the DA's office, they'll tell you they didn't even know it was a separate unit. It's so ingrained. And they had $210,000 of these children's money, and they decided to hold on to it as these children suffer. That is unconscionable and is unacceptable. And in any other world except Riverside County, that would have been the basis of forcing Mr. Hestron to resign from office, in my opinion, because these children suffer because of his inaction. If you do one thing as a district attorney, it's to protect victims, and especially children. And you were given this money and you decided to hold on to it when you knew or should have known that these children were suffering. Unacceptable, unacceptable.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I
I have one
see-
more question, but I see others have questions as well, so I'll hold off.
Well, we're doing okay on time. Ellie, ask your question quickly.
Well,
Then the
very
she-
quickly,
Then the
there's also,
Sheehans have a question. after that.
very quickly, there's been reports of mistreatment, to put it mildly, in the Indio jail. And this is part of Riverside County, of course, and I have learned that the head of the Indio jail is the brother of Bianco. And I'm wondering if, as DA, if you plan to, or if you're considering pursuing that further as to what the heck is going on in Indio, where people are, at least 5 have already died.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, the DA's office is the only civilian oversight other than the only local civilian oversight of the sheriff's department. So, right now there is no oversight, and we all know what happens when there's no oversight. Just the fact that there's going to be oversight, people are going to change their behavior. Right now, Mike Hestron and Chad Bianco literally go to events and talk about how great the other person is, which is fine. We need to have cooperation between the police and the prosecutors. But there's a separation, and that separation of powers is critical for the integrity of our entire system. And as long as there's no oversight, and as long as both are funded by the same source to get reelected, those things aren't going to be investigated. And that is why we need a new district attorney.
Thank you. Thank you,
All
Bert.
right, I see the Sheehans have a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. We have 2 questions, actually, Judge Stromsky. Assuming that you have oversight of the sheriff of Riverside County, and assuming further that you win your election, but so does the incumbent Chad Bianco, how would you go about managing that individual? The second question is, we didn't hear on your list of endorsements whether or not you were seeking one from the Desert Sun, but we wanted to ask the question, is that worthwhile? Is it worth going out of your way to get that type of endorsement?
So I'll answer your second. Yes, thank you for that question. I'll answer the second one first. Desert Sun endorsement hearing is actually next week. All 3 candidates, as far as I know, are going. The Press Enterprise endorsement hearing was last week, so the west end of the county, of course. So I've sought both endorsements. I mean, the Press Enterprise tends to be a pretty conservative paper, and we'll see how that goes. I'm cautiously optimistic as to the Desert Sun. As far as working with Bianco, I think the reality is, he's the favorite to win. And I recognize the fact that we elect our sheriff and we elect our district attorney, and just how, like I said, the district attorney has to be separate. That's, I feel the same way about the sheriff. And they're going to run their own business. People of Riverside decide to re-elect Chad Bianco. I have to accept, as the elected district attorney, that is their choice. And so where there is oversight, there's going to be oversight, but there's not going to be unnecessary or intervention into an areas where the district attorney, frankly, doesn't belong. And the district attorney's office must be criminal oversight. But if the sheriffs, we don't, manage their budget or tell them what protocols to use or anything like that. They are a separate agency, and they have to be treated with respect as a separate agency. So where we have oversight is the criminal stuff, and that's something that I think is right now being ignored, and I certainly will step that up.
All right. I have a question, Judge, about what are your stance or position and that of your opponent, Hestron, on bail reform? I know that's a pretty hot topic, both cash bail and other kinds of reform.
Sure, that's a great question, because there's legislation passed and there was initiative on this, as you all remember. First of all, my opponent's position is clear. He's against any kind of bail reform. He said that, doesn't want to get rid of cash bail. My position is a little more nuanced. So first, let me tell you what getting rid of cash bail means. Getting rid of cash bail does not mean, and this is the way it often is portrayed by the right, does not mean letting everyone out of jail pre-trial. It doesn't mean that. All it means is delinking freedom with money. It says we're no longer going to use the amount of money you have as the metric to whether you're in custody or out of custody. We're going to use the factors that matter, whether you're coming back to court, whether you're a public safety threat. There's no public safety interest in saying, people with money should be out and people without money should be in. That doesn't serve any legitimate public safety goal. And so what I want to do, and we're not ready to do this is why I'm not saying let's come off cash bail immediately, because right now we don't have a system that will protect the public if we do this. So we got to first accept that any system that links money to freedom is inherently inequitable and can't be made fair to everyone. And so we need to work ourselves, scale off it. And we need to do that by creating a very robust pretrial services unit. And that means having state-funded ankle monitors so that people can be placed on home detention, drug testing, and other methods of out of custody supervision on cases where people are a public safety threat or a possible public safety threat, so that we can let some people out who otherwise we would set bail, but with conditions that protect all of us. That makes sense, but don't force the person who's not been convicted of a crime. That's pre-trial. You're innocent until proven guilty, but allow them to still be in the community under certain conditions. So we get the best of both worlds. We leave somebody out, but the public is safe. And so we can do this. I mean, we have the ability to do it. We just haven't put the resources into it because we have allowed bail bond agents' interests to control what is right, which is to say we don't want to link your freedom to money. And just so for perspective, there's only, I think, 2 countries in the world that currently have a commercial bail bond industry that principally determines who's in custody, who's out of custody. And I think it's the United States and the Philippines, if I'm correct. The only 2. I mean, so it gives you a perspective that we're way off as far as the rest of the world. And getting off cash bail scares people because it suggests people are going to be out of custody. everybody's just gonna be let out of jail. That's not what getting off cash bail is.
I think that the bail reform and the other one is choosing to prosecute property crimes versus physical crimes and violent are the two issues that are most behind the recalls in San Francisco and Los Angeles, since both of those DAs, Gascon in LA is a former San Francisco DA, and I personally know the present DA, and there's tremendous misperception and spin against them. But those are the two things that are always thrown up as to what's gone wrong. You're not prosecuting property crimes below a certain value, and bail reform, you're letting criminals out on the streets, which is pretty much how it's said. So does anybody else have any questions for Judge Strunsky? This is a tremendous opportunity. I don't see any hands.
Stephen, can I just add one thing? I'm sorry to interrupt. One thing on something you just mentioned.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the things I alluded to in when I started speaking today, but I didn't come back to, is Gaston and Boudin in San Francisco. And I bring it up because I tell you that they have some fantastic ideas. And the problem that I found with both of them, as great as their ideas are, is neither one of them had ever acted as a prosecutor. And they had great backgrounds, tremendous backgrounds, but they never acted as a prosecutor before they took on the role of district attorney. And so what they did is they took these great ideas, like, reducing the amount of enhancements, like, focusing on violent crime rather than nonviolent crime. All these great, really good ideas, and they applied them kind of in a blanket way to all cases on all occasions. And the problem is, and I think prosecutors who had spent years and years in the trenches, like me and some of my former colleagues, really understand that that's not going to work, because every criminal case is different, and every criminal case has to be handled with what you know about that person's criminal history, how serious the actual offense are, and whether certain enhancements move us toward better public safety or in the interest of justice. And so when you apply those really good principles as a blanket to all cases all the time, you end up with a huge amount of backlash. And it's great for a district attorney to have priorities, but remember, prosecutorial discretion is key in reaching just conclusions of cases, because prosecutorial discretion means I'm going to consider this person individually, and I'm going to consider that person for what they did here, what their background is, what it is that got them in the criminal justice system, how we can have some restorative justice, how we can work on rehabilitation, and all of these things, are things that you can't deal with on a macro level. So what I've done in my campaign is I've laid out my priorities, which is to reduce enhancements, and the only thing I've had a blanket policy on is the death penalty. Frankly, I said I'm not going to seek the death penalty, but that's really for pragmatic reasons. Nobody's been executed in California since 1961. It's $1 million more. It's an exorbitantly priced false promise. It just needs to go away. But everything else is the idea that I'm going to stress we're only going to apply enhancements for public safety benefit, and we're only going to scale off these prosecutions that merely rack up mindless statistics and work toward actually keeping people safe. And one of the thing people keep referring to is how Prop 47 has created all these problems. And if you remember, Prop 47 was initiated in 2014, I think, went into effect 2015. And it said that certain felonies, including drug offenses, can go from felonies to misdemeanors. And it set the amount of the theft for a misdemeanor at $950 and below. And people say, well, that's so low, it's such a problem. Well, the state of Texas has, I think, a $1,500 minimum to become a felony. And so, we're certainly not out of whack with other areas. We know after Prop 47, there was no increase in violent crime. There was a brief uptick in property crime, but overall, up to the time of the pandemic, property crime has been down. So part of the problem with this race, and part of the problems I think San Francisco and LA are having, is people are saying that these policies are just you need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I think it's a matter of being careful and considerate and understand these are good principles, but don't need to be applied to every case and every situation.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? This is a great discussion, but I'm biased because I'm a lawyer. Steve Brooks, yes, sir.
Oh, well, I did send it in the chat, but I was just wondering, just for perspective, do you know, I mean, this is a sheriff question, but how much jurisdiction does the sheriff have over the county versus police departments that are, you know, that cities have their own? So in other words, how much policing of, what percentage of the county does a sheriff police, basically, is what I was trying to ask.
You know, that's a great question. I don't know the percentage, but I think everybody knows that the sheriff's department has jurisdiction throughout the entire county, has jurisdiction and is mandated to cover the unincorporated areas. And then a lot of the cities, I think most of the cities here in Riverside County, contract with the sheriff's department to create local police departments. And then some of the cities actually create their own police departments. I think we have one in Murrieta, Hemet, some other areas where they actually create Palm Springs, where they actually create their own police department independent of the sheriff's department. So I don't know the percentages, but I'm going to look into that. But the sheriff's department is the dominant player in the county as far as law enforcement.
That's true. And as a legal matter, I believe it's true that even when a locality has its own police department, such as Palm Springs, that does not deprive the sheriff of jurisdiction there as well. They have what's called concurrent. They both have jurisdiction in the county. So I want to make sure that you understand that. So even when Palm Springs police are on the scene, the sheriff can also be there or assist, or it's not either or. There's concurrent jurisdiction. The sheriff can go anywhere the sheriff wants to go in Riverside County, is the bottom line.
And the sheriff runs all the jails too, which is a huge part of what they do.
That's right. Sheriff runs the jails and provides bailiff services for the courts. If there's a bailiff in the courtroom, they do that. They transport prisoners. Yeah, so correct. All right. Anything else? All right, Judge, thank you. I want to remind everybody, mark it down, May 14th, 4 to 6. Great pizza. By the way, the food there is very good. It's great pizza, and you can rub elbows. That is an in-person event, I will also say. So come meet and socialize. Thank you, Judge, very much.
Thank you. See you all. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
We've got 4 minutes to 3. If anybody else would like to, I'm going to throw the floor open to our members here. If anybody else would like to make a speech, say anything, ask a question.
Yep.
Priscilla, is that your hand?
That's my hand.
Okay.
My other little hand seems to have disappeared from my screen, so it's a real
Okay.
hand. I am one of those people who's very eager for us to go back to in-person meetings. And I know that the board is going to be discussing that. One of the things that I thought that the board might want to do is talk to the presidents of the clubs that have been having live meetings for the last few months, including Indivisible and some of the others, to kind of check on what protocols they have been using and to see if there have been any problems with outbreaks among their membership due to in-person meetings. I think that would at least give us some current and accurate information about the risk factor. And then if we go back to live meetings, one of the things that we did for quite a few years is that we had a phone tree, and all of the board members had a list of members that we would call to encourage them to come to the next meeting. And it gave us an opportunity to know the membership a lot better. and for them to have contact and get to know the board a lot better. And it was one way that we increased our meeting attendance over time dramatically. And if we go back to in-person, or even if not, having that one-to-one contact and a little chatting time with the members is something that seems to work really well for participation.
Okay, well, your points are well taken, and I think, as I said, it's not an easy call. I see the advantages of both ways, so we'll certainly take that into a serious consideration. Marcy, yes, Marcy.
Thank you. I just put in the chat a link. I am hosting together with a Palm Desert small business owner, Roberts of Course Salon, an event for Will Rollins on May 3rd, 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. It's on outdoor patio there, and we'd love to see all of you there and anyone else you'd like to bring. So
All right.
the info's in the chat.
All right, that's good. We have a lot of stuff going on. Very good. Anybody else would like to contribute? We're right into the hour. We're right on time. Michael Finland, I see you're here, but I haven't seen your head for the whole. There you are. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, this has been very, I think, very informative. Thank you all very much for coming. We got a couple more events, May 3rd, May 14, and Marcy, there's something May 15, I remember that, what's May 15?
Oh, we should, Melissa's here. Melissa's hosting an event on May 15th in Palm Springs for the treasurer candidate, but I see her here.
Okay, well, Melissa, we'll bless that out if you'd like us to do that again.
Yeah.
So thank you all, and
that's
if
right.
there's nothing further, I'm going to close the room. So
Bye, everybody.
thank you all.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.